Right now, we're also waiting for the end of an extradition hearing for Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the murder of a CEO. That hearing taking place in Blair County, Pennsylvania. We actually saw him shouting as he was brought in. The first part was hard to hear, but then we do hear the words, an insult to the American people and their lived experience. Now, as we wait, we're seeing a critical shift from the massive manhunt for a killer to the massive investigation that will piece together the thousands of details that prosecutors will use to build the case against Magione. I want to bring in FBI Supervisor Rob D'Amico with me here in studio, Tom Winter, and Danny Cevallos is a criminal defense attorney and MSNBC legal analyst. You know, I want to play that again because I think it's interesting, Tom, that video that we just saw of him. Obviously, the media, you can see the camera there. He realizes the media is on the other side of that police vehicle, and he wants to get a message out of some kind. You know, he's yelling a message where he knows the press is standing. But let's talk a little bit about some of the unanswered questions. We started to get some clues from, obviously, the manifesto, some things that friends are saying, his social media presence, now the things he may be trying to yell to the press. But as we look at prosecutors building a case, what don't we know?
So from the standpoint of everything we've just discussed, it might be totally irrelevant. With respect to what prosecutors are trying to build, it's to tie him back to the killing, which is what he's been charged with. So the gun, can they tie that gun back to the shooting? Can they tie that gun to him? Well, they say it was on his person yesterday. Can they look at it and look at the words that are included in the writings that were found on him, where he discusses and it makes allusions to exactly what it was that occurred in that driver's license. It's a fake driver's license on the right-hand side, which we're told, according to law enforcement officials, was the one that was presented at the hostel on the Upper West Side. It's the same name, and then the one that was later on his person when he was taken into custody. So I think when you look at all of that, it's probably something that's going to be pretty helpful. You know, as far as the outburst that we saw today, it just kind of goes back to a question I've had about this case from the beginning, which is, if he didn't want to be captured and took all of these steps to do it, then why are you then prepared to have effectively a statement and now he's speaking out? So it's just kind of like, if you wanted to make a statement, you would have done so after the fact. But, I mean, he took extraordinary steps to elude capture for almost a full week. So it's just an interesting kind of an observation that I have, and I don't pretend to have any answers about it.
Yeah, I wondered about that yesterday. I thought he did such what seemed to be a pre-planned job of getting out of New York, presumably getting on a bus. And then you sit and have breakfast at a McDonald's where people can see you. So a lot of it, it does raise questions, and I don't have an answer either.
Taking the precautions, the same thing he did at the hostel where he's got the mask on, but he takes it down to eat. You know, I mean, the line from his writings is, I do apologize for any strife or traumas, but it had to be done. Frankly, these parasites simply had it coming. The person sitting to my left is probably much more qualified to tell us whether in front of a jury that accounts to an admission, but it's certainly not a denial of what occurred. So I think that's something that, you know, he's clearly wants to speak out about this. No better example than what we just saw seconds ago on screen, which happened moments ago outside of his court hearing. So we'll see where all this goes.
Yeah, and tie that into Danny Cevallos, the fact that if you go to his social media page, you see, among other things, an X-ray of a back, and his friends have talked about how he was in a lot of pain, how he had surgery, and so on and so forth. So what are prosecutors doing right now to build this case?
Remember, there's a lot of information, I think, that we don't have yet. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that prosecutors, by the time this suspect was apprehended, that they knew who he was. Maybe they had DNA. I expect they had a lot more information than we knew publicly. So I have to say, you know, when I see people online on social media saying things like, well, the eyebrows don't match in this picture. Folks, there's going to be more evidence than the matching eyebrows in the two different pictures. This is probably not going to end up being a whodunit. We just don't know all the evidence yet. You're going to have probably touch DNA. You might even have witnesses from the hostel where he stayed. And all in all, all, there's a lot of talk also on social media about how this was some kind of perfect crime. I don't think so at all, other than maybe moving into Central Park, which has, by the way, it has cameras. It has less cameras than Midtown Manhattan, but it probably has more cameras than, say, most of North Muskegon, Michigan. So there are cameras in Central Park. They were able to track him out. All he really had was a head start. And because of that, he was able to get away for about a week. But other than that, there's really a lot of evidence. And once they had him, authorities seem to think they have the right guy. That leads me to think they have more information than we do, more information that hasn't been released to the public yet.
Okay, so Rob, we talked last hour about investigators getting a lot of stuff from his social media profile. And I guess my question is, he also had a laptop on him, right, when he was arrested. So what are they doing? You know a lot about forensics, online forensics. What can they do in this day and age, and what are they looking for?
So right now they're doing search warrants for those devices. Just because he had them on him, and they were captured, you still have to want to be correct in being able to search them. So they're going to get search warrants for the phone, for the computer, and any other electronics that come across, and any other search warrants. You want separate search warrants to search those items. With the phone, they're going to work on actually breaking the PIN or the password. They may come to the FBI. We've done it before, because you want to get into that phone. With encrypted apps, unless he has deleting messages, you want to be able to look at all those apps and the messages going back and forth. And the only way you can do it is from the device, unless the laptop also you can share Signal, WhatsApp, Telegram with a laptop or an iPad. So you also want to search that one. But they're going to go in, they're going to do a forensic copy of that. And then they're going to start looking at the forensic digital copies, because you don't want to mess with the original phone or something. You want to do it on the forensic copy, so the one that you take to court is pure in that one. That forensic copy was from the actual device. But there's going to be so much going in there. There's search warrants to all the providers too, with his Twitter or his X, his Facebook, and they're going to get all that. They took it down offline, but the NYPD or the FBI will get those social media accounts, again, to look at it. You want three phases, before the crime for premeditation, during the crime, what was happening. There may be digital evidence in there about the cell phone touching a tower close to it. And then after, to start looking at where he went, maybe for other search warrants, and to start interviewing people.
So that brings us to motive, Danny, and this is somebody who had, it seemed, everything. Went to a prep school, graduated as valedictorian, gets an undergraduate degree and a master's degree from UPenn, Ivy League school, comes from a well-to-do family with a lot of connections. And there does seem to be, we don't want to presuppose anything, but from the little bit that's been public about his manifesto, if that's what we're going to call it, but his writings, let's say that, from what he just shouted, it may have been related to discontent with the insurance and the healthcare system in America. A lot of his friends, including those in Hawaii, where he was known to live most recently, have talked about situations with his back. So let me play a little bit of that came up with friends in conversations with people he knew.
I was like, oh my God, that's my neighbor. So I just asked him where he's been, and for 6 months he was on the mainland, he just said medical stuff.
Earlier this year, I checked in with him. He confirmed that he had surgery, and he sent me the x-rays. It looked heinous, with just giant screws going into his spine.
So would prosecutors already have his medical records? Will they be able to easily subpoena them? And how important is motive in a prosecution?
It's very important, although motive is not an element of crimes, with some exceptions, hate crimes, for example. But for the most part, motive is never an element of a crime. It's intent that the prosecution has to prove.
Right?
There you go. So exactly right. Motive is something that I think prosecutors are going to develop over time. They have so much to work with, so much on social media. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, Tom, I'm sure you've been sifting through, mini manifestos, postings, all kinds of information. Once they align that into a coherent theory, they will present that to a jury, because juries like to know what the motive is. Even if the government doesn't need to prove it, it's helpful, because juries often ask the question, why? Why would someone do this? And it seems already, just based on what we've learned in the last 24 hours, that the government, the prosecutors, will be able to come up with plenty of motive evidence.